So if it wasn't enough for us to get Finon and the Fate collab characters in 3.4, we are also getting a triple rerun banner that is also going to have 3 Harmony characters on it. This is super crazy for players for just how much value this banner can give. So today I want to give first a quick recap on how the characters work, being Tribbie, Sunday, and Sparkle, and then I want to talk about their overall value and whether or not these reruns are worth pulling for. And of course I'm going to talk about vertical investment as well for each of them, since I know there are plenty of players out there who are going to be looking for Eidolons for these characters because of how good Harmony supports generally are. So let's jump in first with the elephant in the room, which is Tribbie. So Tribbie is a quantum Harmony character, and she is a combination of a buffer and a sub DPS because she does have some pretty nice damage potential in her kit. So starting out with the buff she gives, they actually are pretty straightforward in all honesty. The first buff she gives is from her skill, which is a team-wide 24% all-type res pen increase, which is super nice. And not only that, but her technique actually works exactly like Rerun Maze, meaning that it activates her skill at the start of battle. So you can make sure in any kind of endgame that you're going to have this active right when the battle starts, so you can already go into doing even more damage with your allies. And then the other buff she gives is through her ultimate, which will apply a zone for 2 turns, and enemies in the zone will take 30% more damage, which is just super nice. And her buffs are very universal because they aren't focused on just HP scaling or just attack scaling or like just crit. They are for all type res pen and damage received for enemies, which are buffs that pretty much any DPS can take advantage of, which is super nice, and that makes Tribbie work in a lot of teams really well. But then, as I said, she also can deal some damage. Now, she is an HP scaling character, so you will want to build her with a good amount of HP, which also helps her survivability there. Now, when it comes to her damage, her ultimate is an AoE attack, and anytime the zone is up with the ultimate, if an ally attacks it any amount of enemies, Tribbie's going to deal some additional quantum damage to the enemy with the highest HP, which is super nice to just get a bit more damage on them. Also, Tribbie's talent is going to allow her to use a follow-up attack on all enemies whenever an ally uses their ultimate, and she can do this once per ally, and the amount of counts per ally will reset when she uses her ultimate again, which is super good because Tribbie does also give herself energy based on the amount of targets that are hit by allies. So Tribbie's ultimate cycles are actually pretty fast, all things considered. Then also she does get some damage increases through some of her traces. Her Ascension 2 trace gives her a 72% damage increase for 3 turns whenever she uses her follow-up attack, and this can stack up to 3 times as well. So if you're able to do your ally ultimates in quick succession, then you're going to be able to get some pretty crazy damage increases for Tribbie here. And then also her A4 trace will give her an HP increase based on the sum of her allies' HP. So this is going to be a pretty small kind of damage boost, but if you are running other HP scaling characters, this can also be pretty good as well. So those are the basics of how Tribbie works. So my overall thoughts on Tribbie, as someone who thought that Tribbie was good before release, but not really great, I can say that that was completely wrong. This character is crazy. I think Tribbie has a ton of value as one of the best buffers in the game. Her buffs are super consistent and universal, plus she does also offer up some pretty decent damage as a support character. So that is going to be helpful in some aspects if you need like a little bit of extra damage to get through like a wave or get through 1 health bar of a boss. Tribbie could provide some interesting value there as well. And I think she's pretty much a must-pull character for a lot of the really good meta comps right now. If you're running the Herda, if you're running Casterus, some of the buffed characters that are coming as well will probably benefit from Tribbie because of how universal the buffs are. Really, the only like meta DPS I would say that is not going to really get as much value from Tribbie is going to probably be Finon, because Tribbie does not target her allies as consistently as other buffers. But besides that, Tribbie is going to be super good in a lot of other setups, and I'm sure she's going to stay good for a long time because of how consistent and how universal her buffs are. But now when we get into vertical investment here, between her E1 and her signature light cone, I say E1 is probably a lot more valuable And that's partially because Dance 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 as a 4-star light cone is a really good option for Tribbie. Now, for her E1, whenever she deals the additional quantum damage from her ultimate zone ability, she's also going to additionally deal true damage to that enemy as well. So her damage is going to go up as well with this, making your clear time noticeably faster. And since it's true damage, that also is very helpful. Now, when we compare this to her S1, which is still good, she's going to get 36% crit damage for herself, and after she uses her follow-up attack, all allies are going to get 48% crit damage for 2 turns, which generally is a very good thing since you are getting more damage from Tribbie and also more damage from your allies after you use the follow-up, which is going to be pretty consistent because it's just whenever they ult, Tribbie will use the follow-up. But just because of how good Dance 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 is, and obviously if you don't have Dance Dance Dance, that is a little rough, but that light cone is still super good, and I think it's good enough to the point where if you don't have the resources to go for both E1 and S1, I would go for E1 to just get a bit more damage and make your clears a bit faster, because Dance 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 is very powerful on Tribbie. So next up, let's talk about Sunday here, which it is also his first rerun, which is super exciting for a lot of people. Now Sunday is just a straight up buffer, but he does have some extra synergy with characters that have summons, so the Remembrance Path and then other miscellaneous summon characters like Topaz, Jing Yuan, and Lingsha. So starting out here with his ultimate, whenever Sunday uses his ultimate, he's going to target one ally and have them restore 20% of their maximum energy. And if this amount is less than 40 energy with his Ascension 2 trace, he's going to regenerate 40 energy for them instead, which is a pretty considerable amount of energy as well. And the target of this ultimate will become the Beatified for 3 of Sunday's turns, which is super nice to keep the uptime up, especially since you're going to be advancing this character's actions a lot mainly, since Sunday is a hyper carry kind of support. And when an ally is the Beatified, they're going to gain a big crit damage buff based on how much crit damage Sunday has, and you can only have one ally be the Beatified at a time. So that is important to know, that you can't just get a bunch of ults off for Sunday and keep a bunch of allies Beatified. It's only going to be active on one. Then the other source of his buffs is going to be through his skill. So his skill works pretty much like Bronya's, where you advance one ally's action by 100%, but unlike Bronya, Sunday will also advance the action of their summon as well if they have one. And when advancing an ally with this, they're going to deal 30% more damage for 2 turns, but if they have a summon, this buff will increase by 50%, being a crazy 80% damage increase. And if the target ally is the Beatified from the ultimate, they're also going to recover 1 skill point when Sunday advances them, which is super nice to make teams a little bit better for skill points. And also, his talent also works into the skill here as well, which is that anytime you use the skill on an ally, their crit rate is going to increase by 20% for 3 turns. So you also are going to get more consistency by having a higher crit rate, which is also very good, especially for characters. If maybe your build, you're at maybe like 70 or 80% crit rate, you're going to be able to get up to 90 or 100%, making your overall damage output a lot more consistent. So that is very good there, and it's pretty much the main things you need to know for Sunday's kit, because his gameplay is very straightforward as a hyper carry support. So I overall think that Sunday is still a very strong character, and I think he is probably for the like hyper carry specific supports, he is the best one. He's better than, you know, Bronya. We'll talk about Sparkle in a bit here since she's the other character, but it is very strange though that Sunday came out as a character that has synergy with summon characters, but a lot of these summon characters in the game actually prefer other supports right now. So we'll have to see if Sunday's going to have some more value later on, but we are going to have to see for that. But for right now, he does have a lot of great synergy with hyper carry DPSs, and this is going to work really well, not just with Finon, where he's going to be able to actually give Finon 2 stacks of Finon's ultimate charge with Sunday's ultimate, but also just with some of the characters that are getting buffed in 3.4 as well, since they will be able to benefit from damage increases and crit damage increases. They're also going to perform very well alongside Sunday. Now, when it comes to vertical investment for Sunday, both his S1 and his E1 are good, but his S1 is going to have some more value because it's going to end up making his kit skill point positive, which is a very big thing for him as a support. So for his signature light cone, anytime he uses his skill or ultimate on one ally, he's going to recover 6 energy. And when you target an ally with either the skill or ultimate, they're going to gain 1 stack of him for 3 turns, and this can stack up to 3 times. Each stack of him is going to increase the damage dealt by the ally by 15%. So this can max out at 45%, which is a really nice damage increase as well on top of everything he gives. Plus, after every 2 uses of Sunday's skill or ultimate, he's going to recover 1 skill point as well, making it really good to just get a lot of skill points back with his kit here, since you are going to be using skill and ultimate basically all the time whenever you can. Then to compare that to his E1, his E1 really just gives an extra damage amp to allies, so whenever Sunday uses his skill on an ally, they're going to be able to ignore 16% of the enemy's defense for 2 turns, but if they have a summon, the summon's attacks will ignore 40% of the enemy's defense for that duration, which is super crazy to just get a lot more damage. Now, once again, there aren't as many like Remembrance characters that really want Sunday over other supports, but if we get other ones that do, then Sunday is going to become very valuable for them. And I think this E1 will probably get a bit more valuable as there's more characters that want Sunday, but even with that, I think the comfortability of his signature light cone is going to be the way to go here. And then our final character for this triple rerun is going to be Sparkle, who is also a Quantum Harmony. So Sparkle is, like Sunday, a hyper carry buffer, but rather than having the sort of summon niche like Sunday does, Sparkle is more like an all-arounder. But if you had to give her a kind of niche, I guess you would say she's like a Quantum hyper carry support because of one of her trace abilities, which we're going to get to in a moment here. But let's start out with her skill. So her skill is once again very similar to Bronya's, but instead of a 100% action advance for one ally, it's only a 50%, which could cause some weird inconsistencies based on how your speed tuning is. And using the skill will increase the target ally's crit damage based on Sparkle's crit damage. Now, this buff will actually last until the start of the next turn for that ally, meaning that you're going to be able to do your attack, and then if your DPS that you're boosting up with this has a follow-up attack or can attack for any reason outside of their turn, they're still going to have the crit damage buff, which is going to be super nice to give them a nice damage increase. Then for Sparkle's talent, she's going to increase the maximum skill points by 2, so it'll bring you up to a max of 7 skill points. And with the talent, all allies will deal an extra 6% damage to enemies for 2 turns whenever a skill point is consumed, and this can stack up to 3 times as well, making it to have up to an 18% damage increase. Then for Sparkle's ultimate, she's going to recover 4 skill points for the team, and is also going to apply the Cypher effect to the entire team for 2 turns. Now, allies with Cypher are going to increase the amount of the damage increase from her talent stacks by 10% per stack, making the buff for that go up a lot more. So you are going to get a very strong amount of damage increase from this, which will make your allies just do even more damage. And then lastly, for the Ascension 6 trace, which is what I alluded to earlier, this is going to give a permanent 15% attack boost for all allies, but if you have any Quantum allies on the team, there's going to be an additional attack increase for any Quantum characters on the team based on how many Quantum characters are on the team. So if you have 1 Quantum ally in addition to Sparkle, there's going to be an extra 5% attack increase. If you have 2 Quantum allies, there's going to be a 15% increase, and if you have the entire team being Quantum, you're going to have a 30% attack increase, which is pretty solid if you are running that kind of comp. So those are the main things about Sparkle's kit there. So for my overall thoughts, while Sparkle is, a solid buffer, she's not universally as good as Sunday or Tribbie, and she really only has one relevant best in slot team, which isn't even in the game right now. It's going to be in it soon though, is going to be Archer. And like I mentioned with the action advance from the skill, there could be some weird situations where you don't get advanced all the way with her based on your speed tuning, which could be a little tough for players who are not like absolutely optimizing all of their builds. But Sparkle could have some value for sure. Like, she can still work if you don't have like every harmony in the game and you need to have more harmony characters for, you know, certain types of content. So she can have some value, but I definitely would not prioritize her above the other harmony characters on this triple rerun unless you are really focused on building Archer and using him a lot. But now for the vertical investment for Sparkle. I do think that her E1 and her signature light cone have some pretty solid value and are pretty close to each other if you can only go for one or the other. But if you can go for more than one, I would honestly recommend going for E2. But first, let's talk about her signature light cone here. So this is going to give her 32% crit damage, and at the start of battle, she's going to gain the mask effect. When she has mask, all allies are going to get an extra 10% crit rate and 28% crit damage. And every time Sparkle recovers one skill point, she's going to gain one stack of Radiant Flame. And this also includes skill points that exceed the maximum amount of skill points, so it does also count those. And once you get 4 stacks of Radiant Flame, those stacks will be removed, and you'll regain the mask effect for 4 turns. So you do want to try to keep that buff up as much as possible to give some more damage and consistency to your allies. And also, you're going to be able to refresh mask every time Sparkle uses her ultimate, since she does already recover 4 skill points with that ultimate there. So that is a very solid light cone for her. Then for Sparkle's E1, she's going to increase the duration of the Cypher effect from her ultimate to 3 turns now, which gives it near perfect uptime as long as you have enough energy regen to get your ultimate in 3 turns. And the Cypher effect will also give an additional 40% attack to all allies. So E1, the S1, like I said, very similar value because they are going to give some offensive buffs as well. I think the attack is going to be pretty good, more so for non-quantum allies, but of course it still is nice to have some, you know, big attack numbers there. But if you can go for E2, I think it's super worth it, because Sparkle's E2 is going to make it so that every stack of the talent's damage increase will also allow allies to ignore 8% of the enemy's defense. And since it's so easy for Sparkle comps to use a lot of skill points, you're pretty much going to have the max of 24% defense ignore pretty much all the time, which is super nice and is a great way to just deal a lot more damage. So really, that is everything there for Sparkle and for all the characters there. I definitely think that both Sunday and Tribbie are going to be the premier picks here for people who don't have them. Sparkle is really like on a as needed basis, because if you aren't really using Archer, if you're not still trying to make Imbiber or Lune work, then you're not really going to get as much value out of Sparkle. But the other two are going to have a lot more value across the entire game. But I would love to hear what you all think of these characters if you're going to be pulling for these reruns, in addition to Phynon, in addition to Saber. There's so much for us to, you know, think about pulling for in the first half of 3.4 here. But I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed and want to see more content from me, be sure to hit that subscribe button. But with that, everyone, I will see you all next time.